Hello, hello. So back earlier this summer, I asked a bunch of people in my community if they had any questions, because I kind of wanted to make a Q&A, and I had also gathered up some random questions that I thought would be nice for a question and answer session, and they answered in spades. So let's get answering some questions. A lot of these are from the same few people, just because they have a lot of questions. First off, we have White Crow, who has asked lots of questions. I really appreciate that. This gave me a lot to work with for this video. White Crow makes the webtoon Vinswept, so if you want to check that out, have at it. First question here from White Crow is, how do you schedule and plan things out? I primarily use just paper checklists and calendars. I will try to plan out each day using just a checklist and put everything that I want to get done that day on the checklist. Currently, I only have one super regular webtoon update, and that is the Pumpkin Sells Real Estate, and it only updates every other week, so that one is pretty easy to stay on top of now that I've given myself an actual reasonable workload per every 2 weeks. So I will usually just write down things like line backgrounds for, that one day. My goal is to line 3 pages worth of backgrounds, and I'll just put that on the checklist for any given day that I want to get stuff done on. If I have really specific deadlines, I will put that on the paper calendar. And yeah, that's just kind of how I schedule and plan things. A lot of it is just me making it up as I go. I don't tend to have really specific structured planning. Used to try to do bullet journaling and stuff, but I just didn't keep up with it, and now writing things on a paper calendar and on just checklists seems to work best for me. So yeah, that's what I do. Natasha, who makes the comic Pot of Gold on Webtoon, asked, how do you make so many comics? What's your work routine like? That one, I used to make so many more comics at any given time. Nowadays, I really can only balance 2 at a time, and even then, I can't usually stay on top of both of them. But it really just comes down to, I don't have that much of a social life. That isn't exactly what a lot of people probably want to hear, but yeah, I do tend to spend a lot of time at home, and if I'm watching a movie or just hanging out with people, sometimes I'll watch church services and stuff online. Just whenever I'm doing other stuff, I pretty much always am working on my comics in some capacity. I tend to say that I work at my comics like a 9 to 5, but it isn't conventional hours. I'm not spending, that exact amount of work hours every single day, and I'm also not doing it in one long chunk. Now that I'm married, I usually will work on comics for an hour, maybe even just half an hour, and then I'll run and flip the laundry, load the dishwasher, something like that, start making dinner, and while I'm waiting for things to finish, just waiting for a load of laundry to finish running, I'll come back up to the office and I'll work on that for a bit longer. But yeah, I used to work on all of my comics so aggressively and have so many of them running, just because that was literally all I did. I wasn't in a relationship, I hardly went out to see friends. That was maybe 3 times a month I would go out and do stuff with friends. Didn't have a job outside of the house or anything. I really just spent pretty much all of my time just sitting in my room. So I didn't have anything else better to do. So I would make comics, and that kept me going. That's usually how I make so many. But now my work routine usually revolves around my husband's work schedule. He works overnights, and he works 4 days out of the week, 10-hour shifts. So I keep a day schedule. I tried to do the night schedule, did not work. Bad for my health, just generally not working good. But he'll get home in the morning. I usually get up around 6:30 or 7, and he's usually home about 7 a.m. and I'll usually tried to make him some kind of meal. It's his dinner, but, you know, my breakfast. I'll make a meal. We'll share that. He usually gets to bed by about 9 or 10. And then from then until around 5:30 or 6 in the evening, I just do housework. And like I said earlier, I just kind of jump back and forth between housework and working on comics. Then he'll get up, I'll make his dinner and everything, see him off, help him out the door. Once he leaves, I usually work on comics more. I'll sit down, I'll upload files, sometimes I'll stream, record videos. That's what I'm doing now. That's pretty much my work schedule. I don't tend to work on comics over the weekends anymore just because they're so busy. But sometimes I will. Sometimes I'll bring the iPad into the living room or something, and when we're watching a movie, I'll just be scribbling away in the background. Elena, creator of Deerface on Webtoon, asks, can I give a rundown of my favorite time-saving tips? So, learning keyboard shortcuts, that is one of my absolute favorite tips, is just figuring out your program. For me, in Clip Studio, I use copy, paste, cut as keyboard shortcuts. Use those constantly. That has saved me a lot of extra time. As well as the brush size changing shortcuts. That helps a lot. I tend to just entirely skip backgrounds. That helps a lot with time saving. Using royalty-free photos and just tracing those for backgrounds so that you don't have to do any guesswork. That helps so much. That is one of my favorite things that I've started doing. Places like Unsplash, that's usually where I source a lot of my photos for environments and stuff. Taking your own photos also works super well if you can get to places that, you know, share environments for your comic or art or anything. It's not always doable just because, you know, sometimes you're making a fantasy comic and that kind of place doesn't actually exist. But, yeah, those are some of my favorites. Also, I will show you. People have asked me how I get Lantrell's head so consistent in the Pumpkin Sells Real Estate. I made a maquette, and every time you see his face in the comic now, I take a photo of this maquette, put it in the comic, and trace it. So that is the way I keep him consistent, and it saves me a bunch of time trying to figure out where in the world all of the lines of his pumpkin rind should be and everything. So making maquettes. It takes a while up front, but it is so worth the investment of time. Love this thing. Trying to make a 3D model of him, but that kind of involves learning a whole new program because I've never done 3D modeling before. But I'm excited to do that so that I can have the 3D model just in Procreate from the beginning, and I don't even have to bother taking the photos and importing them and everything. Another one from White Crow. How long does it take to make one page, or how much time do you typically spend on comic making / art? Comic pages vary wildly. Your average page of the Pumpkin Sells Real Estate may take me anywhere from an hour and a half to 8 hours. It really just depends on how many characters are on the page, how detailed the backgrounds are, what the lighting situation is. Sometimes even if it's a simple page, I just struggle, and it'll take me like 4 or 5 hours for just a talking head scene. I don't mean like Talking Heads, the band. I mean the comic making phrase of it's just characters talking to each other, nothing else really going on. I try to avoid having those so much. I try to give my characters something to do, but you know, it's not always super feasible. Yeah, per day, I try to spend at least 3 hours working on art stuff if I'm having like a really busy day, but on an average day, I spend around 5 to 9 hours, I think, doing art stuff. So that doesn't always mean that's how long I spend drawing or anything. That may be, you know, I'm sitting somewhere lettering, I'm assembling a PDF, I might just be making things like maquettes or doing dumb admin stuff like messing up my websites. But yeah, that's usually how long I spend on a lot of things like that. Another from White Crow. Actually, the next handful are from White Crow. I'll just tell you when they're not from White Crow. Love you so much. White Crow has helped me immensely with doing color flats for some of my comics, so I really appreciate that. What are your favorite shows? What shows inspire me a lot? Like, some of my all-time favorite shows are X-Men Evolution and Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Those kind of indirectly got me into making comics, and I can watch them again and again and again, and I do. Kind of a weird one, but one that I love to have on whenever I'm just working as sort of background noise and something that I don't have to pay a ton of attention to is T&T, which is a Mr. T detective law show. It's interesting, but I actually love it. It's a wonderful show. I find it quite delightful, even if it is kind of, goofy. It's old, but it's old but gold, I've talked about it before on the channel because of the surprisingly good rabbit handling that was on it. What shows inspire me a lot, though, again, X-Men Evolution and Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Those ones are fantastic, and if I'm feeling kind of like low energy creatively, those help a lot, because they just remind me a lot of my inspirations and where I came from and why I started doing what I do. It's not a show, but Anastasia, the film, always makes me just really want to sit down and make stuff. It's just such a gorgeous film, and yeah, I really love that movie. I love cartoons. I mostly, like, if I am just sitting on my own trying to pick what to watch, I'm usually watching cartoons. How do you recharge after burnout? What other hobbies/things do you do to recover? I am not a good person to ask about burnout because I tend to create a lot of burnout in myself because I just don't like stopping working, because that's kind of my thing, is making stuff. I love creating, but I tend to send myself into death spirals of creative burnout. It's messy. But usually I will try to step back. I will just try to get lots of sleep, spend as much time as I reasonably can away from working. It's not always an option to just entirely stop working, especially when you have like a really rigid deadline or anything like that. Making sure that you're eating and getting lots of water helps, and just spending some time to focus on regular, normal life stuff. It helps. Like I said, I'm not a good person to ask about this kind of thing, but usually I just try to pretend like I'm not an artist. That's not really, I don't think that makes a lot of sense, but I try to pretend that I am just a normal person who doesn't have art to do, and I try to go about things like just doing housework and making food. Just doing the bare minimum of existence. Sort of related, how do you manage self-care while working on comics? Trying to limit how long I'm using my wrist. I have a ton of compression gloves and braces that I use a lot, which I have, because of a lack of self-care when making comics, I have actually permanently damaged my arm. So don't do as I do. Yeah, you have to take breaks. Even if it's just little short, like 5 or 10 minute breaks when you're drawing, you need to just like get up, stretch your arm, do stuff that is not drawing. And if your arm starts hurting or anything, take a break from drawing. Don't permanently damage your arm like I did. I am still able to draw, but it does hurt a lot usually. You have to balance your time actually drawing and your time away from drawing. And I highly encourage taking frequent breaks and just letting your arm rest. It's also important to like massage your arm. That helps a lot. Just doing the proper stretching and taking good care of your arm is important. But that's really generally the only kind of self-care I really manage when I'm doing comics. I am not a good role model when it comes to health and comics, guys. I try to do good and I'm trying to be better, but I struggle a lot. Like I said, I'm a bad authority on this. I've permanently injured myself. I'm doing better about it because my husband will actually, make me take a break if I'm not, because he can see that I'm pushing myself too hard. So my health has actually improved a lot since marrying him. It's wonderful. And also prioritizing spending time with him over the weekends as opposed to working over the weekends, because I used to work every single day of the week. Bad idea, don't do it. That has helped me a lot because it gives my arm time to rest after a busy week of work. How did you come up with the story you are currently working on? The one that I'm going to pick to talk about is The Pumpkin Sells Real Estate, which I've shared the story a few times, but I was at Home Goods with my mom, and they had put out their autumn decorations, and one of them was like this hipster pumpkin head guy wearing like jeans and a blazer and a bow tie, and I was like, that is the cutest thing ever, I want to draw that. So I took a picture of him and went home. Didn't buy it because I didn't have the money at the time. But I went home and using that picture as reference, I drew him. I loved how the character came out and just the idea of like a modern day pumpkin head guy. I love that. It's not necessarily a new concept. The object head characters are all over the place and people love pumpkin headed characters. Can't blame them. It's a fun design. But just, I kept drawing him, and I would send pictures to my sister, and we would just talk about what would this guy's deal be if he was like an actual character. And then next thing I knew, he was. I was sharing pictures of it, the design and stuff, as I was sort of making it my own and not just directly copying the Home Goods pumpkin guy. I was sharing it in a group with a bunch of other artists and creators. I would share pictures in there, and they also would come up with ideas for him that I would wind up incorporating into what I thought was just a fun character design. And I started coming up with like a backstory for him, but I wasn't planning on making a comic of him until finally enough people said, I would love to see a story with this guy, that I just kind of went, okay, so we're doing this now. It just sort of was a natural progression, but I'm glad that it happened, even if it has sprouted into a 3-volume long, many-year project. Very long project, and it's one of the hardest comics that I draw of all of my comics, just because of the art style. I've overcomplicated the art style, but it's pretty, so I have to keep making it because it's pretty. I'm also like 17 issues into the comic, and I can't change the art style now. It's too late. I'm in too deep, guys. Here's one from Ian, creator of Black Fox on Webtoon and Tapas. I think most of the comics that I've mentioned are actually available on Tapas as well. I'm not positive on that though, so I primarily use Webtoon these days, so I will just link them in the comments and stuff. I think earlier I said I was going to link it in the description. I apologize. I actually plan to link them in the comments so that it's a bit easier for people to find, or at least I think it's easier to find if it's like the top pinned comment or anything. Ian asks, what character / series do you enjoy drawing the most and why? Honestly, I think one of my favorite characters to draw is Clay from Aces. He was like one of the first characters I came up with for having like a big comic. I just love drawing Aces, even though I really am not doing it right now. It's like one of my favorite comics that I have. It's just on a extremely extended hiatus while I try to wrap up some other projects. So Aces really is like one of my heart passion projects. But if not Aces, honestly, Eugene from Go for Rich is so fun to draw. I love drawing that guy, and I think it's because of his attitude and just how pointy he is, because his eyes are just literal triangles. They are fantastic. A lot of the designs in Go for Rich are really graphic and angular or just highly shape-based. It's super fun. Another from White Crow. Do you have any plans for the future in terms of both art and life? And I got a very similar one from Nahi, who creates Rags and Rascals. And Nahi asked, any goals related to your art career for the next year? I would like to finish at least 2 graphic novels before the end of this year. But just life goals in general, I would like to move. I'd like to get moved into a house that is ours, because right now we're renting, and I would like to have a house where I'm free to just do whatever off the wall design stuff that I would like to do, because I would love to do funky decorating and painting and stuff, but since we're renting, don't really want to do that. I have pretty forgiving landlords, considering we're renting from family, but just in general, it doesn't feel like I can really do anything too substantial here, just because we don't own the place. So, big life goal would just be getting a place of our own. Art goals for the future, especially like the next year, really would just be to finish more graphic novels. And I would like to publish a written novel that's 300 pages long. I don't know why, I just have always had this goal that I want to make a novel that's like 300 pages long. I think part of it is that as a kid, a lot of the novels that I read and really loved were right around that 300 page mark, and for some reason that's just always felt like a really good length for a book to me. So I want to make one that length. I have a book in the works that I think is going to hit that goal, but I'm not sure yet, so I gotta finish it to see. More from Eliana. What is your favorite color and what is your favorite food? My favorite color is lavender, and I also really love like dark green and black. Black is just a nice color. You can kind of tell from just how I'm currently dolled up is I like wearing black. It's hard to find clothes of the style that I like that are also like lavender or dark green, so a lot of my favorite clothes tend to be black. I also love bright red. Bright red is a very nice color. Favorite food? That's tricky. Probably like beef and potato stew or homemade pizza. My dad's recipe of homemade pizza has always been something that I don't think I've ever gotten sick of it, actually. I've eaten like a pizza and a half's worth of his homemade pizza, which they're big pizzas, very big pizzas, and still wasn't tired of it and was sad when it was all gone. So I need to get that recipe. It's good food. Good food. Caitlin, who makes Yellow Toe, is currently on hiatus, but she's working on some other stuff. She asks, you use a lot of different styles in your various stories. What style would you say is the most naturally Lissy-handed? I would say probably Alley Dragons. It may be black and white, and like it uses screen tones, which isn't really, the most Lissy-handed thing. But just the line art style for Alley Dragons, I would say that like the rough line work and the kind of more realistic proportions and stuff and detailed outfits, clothes, stuff like that, I would say that that's what comes most naturally. I try to lean towards that style with like Aces and the Heyday Kids and stuff, but every single style that I have has a different purpose to it and a reason that I do it that way. I feel like just a lot of the art that I've done for Alley Dragon stuff, that really feels like the most truly Lissy style stuff. But yeah, I have a lot of art styles because I love exploring. White Crow asks, are any of your characters based off real people? Yes, but not like super heavily. A lot of the time it's just little tidbits of people, maybe something visual or like an aspect of a personality or something. But like a good example is that Bowie from Wrong About the Stars was very, very, very loosely inspired by my now husband. At the time, we were just good friends. I just liked his vibe, and bits of his personality made his way into Bowie. Bowie is still very different from my husband, but there are a lot of elements of them that, like mannerisms and stuff, that I really implemented because of my husband. Sometimes that is a less than flattering thing, and I won't share the characters and people that have those inspirations. Another from White Crow: what is your favorite webtoon? It's probably cheating to say my own. One that I always immediately open the notification for and start reading like right then and there if I can is Secrets of Sulfurd. I read a lot of webtoons. It's hard to pick like a lot of favorites, but I would say that Sulfurd is just probably like one of my all-around favorites. Nahi asks, what are your favorite and least favorite parts of the comic production process? I love sketching. Sketching is one of my favorite things to do. If I could make comics that were all just like rough, funky looking sketches, I would. And I know there's nothing stopping me from doing that, but it's also really hard to just tell myself, no, you can't do the line art or anything. You can't make it polished. Because I may love doing the sketching, but I also love the look of finished art. Like, I love it. I love pencils, though. Doing the pencils. It's my jam. Least favorite of the comic production process is probably doing, like, formatting. Like, making the pages all set up correctly, getting the margins and everything, and then cutting and pasting the panels to make it the scrolling format for Webtoon. If I could get away with not doing scrolling format, I absolutely would. It's the bane of my existence. Yeah, that probably is one of my least favorite things. That, and then also when I'm getting my stuff printed, the proofing process is so frustrating and time consuming. But necessary evils, right? Another question from Nahi: your experience with Tapas versus Webtoon. That's a big question. I'll try to give a sort of truncated answer there. It's harder to catch people's eye on Webtoon, just in general, because there's so much happening on there all the time. But once you do, the rate of growth on Webtoon is way more explosive than Tapas at times, which is great, and then also really overwhelming. Webtoon's backend for uploading files and stuff, that is a little at times. I've had a lot more errors and glitches and just problems with Webtoon's uploader than I have with Tapas. I feel like just in general, Tapas has a really smooth uploading process, but that just might be because of my preferences. Tapas also allows for bigger images, which I like, and it feels more like it's tailored towards like making print comics as opposed to Webtoon, which feels like they exclusively want you doing web comics. It doesn't feel like a place where they want print style comics. They want things that are very specifically Webtoon flavored. The community on Tapas is a bit less ravenous than Webtoon, but the people on Tapas, it seems like, get maybe more reasonably invested in your comic. I'm not sure if that's going to make sense, but the people on Webtoon feel very, almost like, I don't mean this as a negative thing, but it feels very similar to the vibes that I always got from like Tumblr fan bases. Very energetic and over the top and excitable, which is lovely. It's great to have people just typing aggressively in all caps whenever something big happens in your comic. But it feels like the people on Tapas are a bit more chill about it, but maybe a bit more in depth. That's just been my experience. I know that's not the experience for everyone, but that's just sort of been the difference I've noticed with the comments that I receive. But yeah, a pretty short overview of kind of my differences between the two, but love both platforms for different reasons, and I plan to continue posting on both for as long as I can. CK Heartwing asks, do I have any comic page dimension / comic formatting tips? Yes. So, deciding how you want to publish your print comic at the end of the production process is always a really important thing. That's like the first thing that I try to figure out whenever I'm starting a new comic. And since I self-publish, that makes things easier. I publish all my comics using Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing platform, and they have a handful of just preset trim sizes for your books, and you can find a lot of templates for those preset trim sizes. You can also do custom trim sizes, but I personally prefer just choosing some of the preset ones just because it makes it so much easier. Like whenever you're doing like cover design, you can really way easier calculate templates for that and stuff. So I usually go on KDP and start picking a trim size for my book first, and that helps direct the majority of the rest of the process. That'll help me figure out like my safe margins for the art and everything, and I tend with my comic page dimensions. These days my most common print size is 7x10. Once I have that for sure decided, I usually double that size, and I draw my art at double the size because I highly encourage you to do, like, if nothing else, draw things at a larger size just so that you can use those panels for promotional art or anything later down the line. It'll just save you a lot of headaches, especially if you wind up having to reformat your page for any reason. Like maybe you get picked up by a publisher and they want to print it at a different size. Drawing larger just helps a lot. So a lot of the time I'll draw my stuff around 11x17 whenever I'm going to be printing smaller, about half the size. I'm getting a little bit imprecise here, so I have a hard time phrasing my help. Words are hard, which is why I chose to do a talk to camera question and answer. I'm a genius. For formatting, a lot of the time the way that I do my comics is I will finish the art, and just for sake of example here, the finished art, I will merge all of the layers and export it as a TIFF file, which is a lossless file type that doesn't have transparency, which makes it a smaller file than a PNG file, which does support transparency. PNGs get kind of size prohibitive really quickly, but TIFF files are a nice balance of high resolution and also a reasonable size to work with, especially in bulk. I will export as a TIFF, and then if I'm lettering in Clip Studio Paint, as I usually do, I will import that TIFF file, shrink it down to the print size, and then do all of my lettering on top of that. I always leave my lettering editable, because if I'm formatting for Webtoon or anything, I need to be able to move the word balloons, because Webtoon's very different from print format. So you're gonna have to rearrange a lot. Some people will actually go in and edit even like the art layers, but I just generally don't find a need for that. Having the flattened art and then editable word balloons on top, that I feel like is the easiest workflow for formatting for like scrolling stuff. And then also just if you have any issues with like KDP, sometimes doesn't like how close my word balloons are to the trim zone words. So sometimes I have to sort of nudge my word balloons closer in, and that just makes it really quick and easy to edit and format. I don't know if that was particularly helpful, but hopefully it was. Just formatting and page dimensions are really big topics, so I can try to make more videos on that in the future, and I plan to make videos about lettering in the future. I actually want to stream some lettering. I'm not an amazing letterer, but I think that I do a above average job, I guess, compared to a lot of just random webtoons, and I want to share that knowledge because there's a lot of little neat tricks and tips, and I want to share them and show you guys how I do it. Another from CK Heartwing, any animation tips? Get reference footage. Reference footage saves my life every time. And then also just, I'm not a great animator. I find that using a textured brush actually is a lot more forgiving than trying to do clean line art. You can do clean line art, but using a slightly textured brush, it'll make it so that if you have to do multiple strokes for like a curve or something, it kind of hides the spot where you stop and start, and it just helps you move quicker. That's also just a tip that I have in general for digital art, is using a textured brush. I know that sometimes can make it harder to do coloring, but yeah, that's just something that I've found that helps me a lot. And then just keeping arcs in mind. Most movement goes in arcs, and it helps a lot to map those out, or at least just keep in mind, hey, a lot of movement is in arcs. I'm not explaining that super well, but like I said, I'm not a great animator. It's not really my niche, but yeah. There are a lot of way better animators than me out here on YouTube who have way better tips, but yeah, animation is just a fun hobby for me. Yet another from CK Heartwing. Favorite story genre? I would probably have to say, honestly, drama these days, because I don't love like over-the-top melodramatic stuff, but I feel like drama just best describes the kind of things that are interesting to me. I feel like having deeper interpersonal stakes is generally a lot more common with drama, and if you've read The Pumpkin Sells Real Estate, it's really sort of just turned into a drama. It just really hones in on the characters, and characters are what I love. Cool circumstances are also fun in a story, but characters are usually what keeps me hooked. So that, or just fantasy. Like, I mostly read fantasy novels. Right now I'm reading West King's Heist by Beth Alvarez, and wonderful fantasy. But it is also heists. It's an anthology of like little heist short stories. It's really fun. Yeah, I read a lot of fantasy and drama stuff and romance. Those are kind of my main genres. And then also I read a lot of action stuff too, but these days action stuff is like too stressful for me sometimes. So unless it's something that I've seen before, I generally don't watch or read a lot of action-based like comics or movies, just because it's stressful. I've got too much stress in my life. Can't handle the tensions half the time. Like, oh no, they're gonna blow up a building. How are the heroes gonna stop this? It's too much. This one, I believe, is from Webtoon. I'm quite possibly going to mess up this name, but Aqueous Herbium. What would the cast's ideal pets be? Which I believe this was commented on The Pumpkin Sells Real Estate, so I'm just gonna do that one. I would say that Lantrell is just, he's a cat guy, you know, which doesn't really get shown a lot in the series, but little bits have been shown, because if he didn't live, like, as busy of a life as he does, I think he would probably kind of turn into, like, the pumpkin version of a crazy cat lady. Because even, like, when he was selling the old lady's home and her fluffy white cat hopped up beside him, he was just like, cat, yes. He also has the video on his VidSource channel when Yumi is stalking his socials a little bit, where he's just telling a cat to go home because it's following him. So I think Lantrell would probably be a cat guy. Yumi, I'm not sure. She's always struck me as sort of like a... I feel like she would do, like, rabbits or, like, chinchillas or something. Like, just something small but really soft. Rabbits might be a bit too much drama, though. Speaking as someone who had a rabbit for many years, they are the sweetest things, but they are also so dramatic. My goodness. But they are just love bugs. I miss my rabbit a lot. Maybe like a dwarf rabbit or something, or a pair of dwarf rabbits. I feel like that would be a good pet for Yumi. Either that or maybe like geckos. She might also do good with geckos. Jeff, Yumi's little brother, he would probably do really well with a very active dog. Like, I feel like if he didn't live in the Midwest, something like a husky would probably be really good for him. But since Jeff loves to be outdoors doing a lot of athletic stuff, just hiking for hours and hours during the summer, that probably would not go well with a husky. So maybe something more like a golden retriever. Just some kind of friendly dog that wants to be out doing stuff. I know huskies aren't necessarily the most friendly. They're really more, they're better for like a small family unit, not so much someone who's really out being social a lot. But, you know, I feel like if Jeff were a dog, he might be a husky, even though he's like really social, just because he's funny. He has a lot of husky characteristics at times. Frankie would be, like, she is a cat girl. She loves cats, which is why she went on this huge big ramble about cats whenever she went on the picnic. Jay, he's a tricky one to pinpoint what he would probably, what a good pet for him would probably be. But I think I'm probably gonna go with Fish. I feel like he would be the kind of guy to have like an immaculate aquarium. Maybe even like one of those fancy aquariums that like goes over a doorway. That seems like something he would enjoy. Because he also loves decorating, and I feel like being able to decorate an aquarium would really be good for his character. And just for fun, I feel like Mr. Simcoe, his ideal pet would be a dust bunny, I think. Yeah. Oh, and Effie. I should do her too, because she's a pretty important character. I think that Effie's ideal pet would be... I had one, and then I thought better of it. I thought that she might do well with, like, an Angora rabbit or something, but honestly, I feel like she would do good with, like, a weird cat. Not a normal cat. She would do good with a weird cat. Like a Sphinx cat that she would give sweaters to. I know I've given a lot of the cast cats for this question, but just a lot of the characters in this are kind of more homebodies, more introverted type folks, who I feel like having an independent pet like a cat kind of suits them, you know? I don't know. That's just kind of my thinking. And then the last question on the list, finally. This has been a long video. I might have to edit this down a lot. But long videos are cool. But last question. J.N. Garrett Art asks, how do you create your episodes? Why do you make certain decisions for page flow? That is a really big question. I probably need to do a walkthrough for how I format my pages for Webtoon, but honestly, I do not think about the Webtoon flow hardly at all before I actually get to the Webtoon formatting stage. First and foremost, my concern is always how well will the page read in print. The print page is always my priority because that is the ultimate goal at the end. For the Pumpkin Sells Real Estate, every update is 2 print pages long, and those print pages are always 4 panels, or almost always 4 panels. Like, I have a default template that I use for the Pumpkin Sells Real Estate. Sometimes I tweak it a little bit. Each page is almost always 4 panels long. Just to give a short answer for this, a lot of the creating of webtoon episodes is just kind of picking smooth places to sort of start and stop. I feel like I've improved a lot in doing this, but I try to always have like little mini turns or cliffhangers at the end of every page, and if not every page, then just most pages. I try to have like a question is asked on the last panel of one page and then answered on the next page. This isn't a new concept. I did not invent this. I think I first heard about it in the book How to Make Comics the Marvel Way. Keeping little cliffhangers at the end of your pages keeps someone turning the page. As someone who is primarily known for making a webtoon, I feel like I don't do nearly as much focus on the webtoon end of things as I should, but really most of my advice is just for making print books. A lot of that helps with making a webtoon, but a lot of my advice is primarily tailored towards print. So, I don't know if that was helpful at all. It probably wasn't all that helpful for making a webtoon. That was all the questions I had written down. Like I said, if you happen to have any other questions that you want me to answer, feel free to put them in the comments. I might make full videos off some things. But, yeah, if you've got any ideas for videos that you would like to see, drop those down in the comments as well. Drop your ideas or just any feedback in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. I love just getting people's thoughts on things and hearing how different advice lands, because a lot of my advice is kind of jank. I don't have a terribly structured way of doing things for comics and stuff. If any of this stuff helped you, I am really glad, and if any of this stuff was like, wow, that's really bad advice, I know. As you may have picked up from this video, if you're new here, I make comics. I post them on Webtoon. So if you search Godsend Comics, a lot of my stuff will come up, but right now my main project is a little comic called The Pumpkin Sells Real Estate, which is about what the title implies. It's also a bit of a drama, but main byline of that series is just following your dreams and how life gets in the way of that sometimes. I make lots of comics though, so feel free to check them out, and if you want to get any of my books in print, you can do so on Amazon. Just search Lissy Dixon and they should pop right up, because I've published about 6 books now. So, yeah. I've also started streaming on Twitch again. I gave up on my old channel because I got locked out of it, so I will link my new channel down below, and yeah. That was a lot of promotion, but I just wanted to kind of share what I do for anyone who maybe this is their first video of mine that they're seeing, and then anyone who has seen my videos before but doesn't actually know what all I do, because I've had people who follow me for years that still don't know that I make comics, even though that's the main thing I do. I want to thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you next time. Take care, and God bless.